Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day today. This is John with Gun Deals, and today we're going to be talking about the Palmetto State Armory mid-length classic upper receiver. As you can tell, it is an A2 front sight, kind of polymer handguard guy up here, so kind of an older, again, classic style upper receiver. But before we get into that, Gun Deals, if you don't know, is an excellent website that does not buy or sell anything. They merely provide you with the best links to the best deals in the industry. So whatever you're looking for, you can probably find it on there. In fact, this upper receiver, there is a link for it on there for, I believe, like $329 or less now, because I think the price actually has gone down a little bit since I bought it. So go ahead and check them out. And of course, on top of that, you can always like, share, and subscribe and comment literally anything down below, because that does help us out in the YouTube algorithm. So first off, I don't have any relationship with Palmetto State Armory personally. I bought this upper receiver with my own money back when it was on sale for $329 several months ago. Now I think the prices on their stuff have even come down a little bit more than that. So at the time, this was the cheapest complete upper receiver on the market, which was kind of why I bought it, because I wanted to test out what is just the lowest option in terms of price out there. But since then, prices have come down even more. So now getting into some of the base boring specifications, what we have here is a 16-inch barreled upper receiver. It is, of course, 5.56 chambering, 1-in-7 twist, all pretty good there. The barrel material itself is 4140 or 4150, one of those two. They're both very, very strong, very similar materials, going to give you a very good barrel life. Now, the finish on it is their Parkerized finish, which is, of course, a little bit cheaper, not as nice looking as Nitriding, and not quite as durable. The barrel is not chrome lined or anything like that, but of course all of that helps to keep the price down. And of course up front here we have our A2 flash hider, which is quite nice. It's one of my favorite muzzle devices if you're not running a suppressor or not for a special application like muzzle brake or something like that. Then moving back, we of course have our A2 front sight block, which is pinned in place, which is quite nice. So this is never going to move. It is going to be very, very difficult to get one of these things off. It does have your front bayonet lug and your sling. I would probably never use this sling point, but if you have that older, more classic style sling, then it will of course work. Now this is of course a mid-length gas system, so 16-inch and mid-length gas system go together really well. The barrel profile, I believe, is more of a government profile, so it kind of tapers down in the center, and then it's a little bit longer out front, which is a good, accurate barrel platform. However, it's not the lightest, and it's going to be a little bit more front heavy than some other barrel profiles out there. The polymer handguards are just that. They're the standard polymer handguards. It does have the aluminum heat shielding inside, which is quite nice, and I have shot this gun quite a bit. And usually when I take it out to the range, I put a couple hundred rounds through it at a time, and I don't really let them cool down at all, and my hands have not gotten that hot. So whether I'm using gloves or not using gloves, the internal heat shields do a good job. Stainless steel gas tube, which is of course standard on these guys, and it does have your standard forged upper receiver, all kind of very boring basic mil spec. It is, I believe, 7075 hard coat anodizing. I could not find the roll mark on it for the forge mark on it. Now the optic that I have used on it, I've used several. I've used the Swamp Fox, the 1X Blade. I've used a couple LPVOs on it, and right now I have the SIG Romeo 7, which kind of looks like an aim point. So this kind of looks like, I don't know, a military style rifle, since a lot of them do come with the aim point pros, I believe. Now the bolt carrier group that we are working with here is a very standard, not quite mil spec, but similar to it. It is a black nitride bolt carrier group. It is a 8620 carrier, and then a Carpenter 158, which is the mil spec material for bolts. You guys can argue in the comments section whether the 9310 or the Carpenter 158 is better. However, this bolt has been perfectly functional for about 1,000 rounds that I put through this upper receiver. I have not had any issues with it. I've only cleaned it once at around the 500 round mark, and I have not cleaned it since, so it's been doing very, very good. And of course, just to show you guys, it is just of course your standard bolt carrier group, standard 7075 mil spec charging handle, which is, in my opinion, perfectly adequate. I don't know why a lot of people are spending $100+ on charging handles that give you very little value, considering you, in normal circumstances, should not be using them very much. Now, really quickly, just to go over the lower receiver on here, this is a Tennessee Arms polymer lower receiver, though I've tried this with a couple different lower receiver setups on it. Of note, we do have a 2-stage MBS trigger in here, so this is a very nice trigger. It's about a 3.5 pound brake on it, and it has a very, very hard defined wall with no creep, which I really like. A lot of times you get some lighter two-stage triggers and you hit the wall and then it kind of rolling breaks through it. It's a very light trigger, but sometimes they have this really obnoxious rolling break. This is a very hard wall. You build pressure, no creep, and it just goes off exactly when you want it. A little bit of a longer reset, but it's a two-stage trigger, so I don't mind. Once again, very hard, very tactile wall. You hit the wall, build pressure, and it breaks. Now, talking about the rear buffer setup, and this is kind of going to tie into how the gun shoots. Most of the time, for the first 700 plus rounds or so shooting it, I was using just a standard carbine buffer and carbine spring, and this upper receiver is violently overgassed. Now, I shot mostly steel case through this gun, which is not the cleanest, most reliable ammunition. I did not have any real failures except for one area, and that was during extraction. Ah, damn it. All right, one. So this is the fourth time this has happened with this upper receiver. This is my 223 push rod thing. That's like a barrel cleaner thing. But this is the fourth time it's ripped off the case head. So super sick on that. This one here, the primer actually blew out on it too. Not sure what was going on there, but that was a nightmare to get out. As you can see from the rear end here, I've just been slamming this against the ground with this rod to try and get this guy unstuck from the chamber. So over the 1,000 rounds that I've shot through this upper receiver, I have had 4 very serious malfunctions, and they've all been identical. So when I was running with the standard carbine buffer, carbine spring in the back, with how fast it was trying to cycle the bolt and eject, I had 2 ripped case heads on some Wolf ammunition. Now, the only AR-15 that I've ever had issues ripping off case heads of cheaper ammunition was actually the Wolf A1 series of piston upper receivers, but because of course that piston motion is very violent, metal on metal, it's a very, very fast action. It's a little more snappy than a DI gun should be, and that's the only other AR-15 that I've ever had this problem with. However, on this guy, because it is so overgassed, it ejects steel cased ammunition with a standard carbine buffer at about 1 o'clock forward, and it is, on top of that, we'll talk about that in shootability, but it really hampers this upper receiver's shootability. So over the first 700 rounds, I had 2 ripped case heads, and I thought, okay, well, I'm done with that. So I went ahead and threw an H3 buffer in the rear end. Still standard spring, so I could even add an enhanced power spring on top of that. But currently I am running an H3 buffer in the back, and that did not solve my problem. So it is still, even with an H3, violently overgassed. In its last range session of about 200 rounds, it ripped 2 more case heads off within a span of about 10 rounds. So those are very serious malfunctions, because those require you to get some sort of tool down the barrel, or in my case, just a cleaning rod down the barrel to pound out the stuck case. Could be an ammunition thing, but again, I shoot a lot of steel case, and this is the only upper receiver other than a Wolf A1, which is of course a piston operating system, that I've ever had that problem with steel cased ammo. Now that's with an H3 buffer in the back, so this thing is very, very overgassed. This is 55 grain Wolf, so it's a little overgassed. Now again, remember, this is a budget upper receiver, so I do expect people to be putting cheaper ammunition through it, because it doesn't really make sense to buy the cheapest upper receiver you can and then put the most expensive ammunition you can through it. Most people who are buying these things are probably going to be putting a lot of steel cased, and again, with a standard carbine and an H3 buffer, I'm still getting ripped case heads when I'm using that cheaper steel cased ammunition. Now, to be honest, that's a pretty big downside right there. I don't like to see more than 1 malfunction per 1,000 rounds with a 5.56 AR-15, and honestly, most of my budget guns will go far beyond that in terms of reliability, as long as I clean them every 500 to 1,000 rounds. On top of the reliability issues caused by the overgassing. I'll show you guys lots of slow-mo footage of this and just high-speed footage as well. But the gun recoils much more violently than it should. Again, 5.56 is a very soft, very flat shooting cartridge. So normally it is very, very, very fast, and you can really just pound off rounds on target without issue. However, with this AR-15 upper receiver, the Palmetto State Armory Classic upper receiver, it just jumps around a lot more than it should. Now, of course, it's not uncontrollable. It's not impossible. You can still shoot it really fast, as you guys have hopefully seen in some of the footage, but it recoils more than my 7.62x39 upper receivers. So there's definitely something off with how this upper receiver is gassed. Again, I am running an H3 buffer in the back, and it is still violently overgassed. So in terms of shootability and reliability, for me anyways, it kind of gets a fail in those two areas, which are, for most people, probably the two most important areas on their AR-15, and for me as well. So those are some pretty serious knocks against it. Now, talking about some other things on it, if you were feeding it brass, when I was feeding it brass, it was 100% reliable. So if you want to spend your expensive ammunition on this gun, it is going to extract just fine without ripping off those case heads, because of course brass is easier to extract. On top of that, the accuracy on this guy, even though it's not a free-floated upper receiver, was actually quite good. I put 2 match loads through it. I put some 69 grain hand loads through it, and I put some 77 grain Razor Core IMI ammunition through it. And at 50 yards with just a red dot and a magnifier on it, I was using the SIG Juliet micro magnifier, which is a cool micro magnifier. I really like it, especially for the money. I was able to put up back-to-back groups under an inch with 2 different loads, which again, at 50 yards, that means that it's under 2 MOA, so 1.5 to 2 MOA on a non-free floated AR with a very inexpensive barrel on it is really quite good. Now, normally the gassing would not be such a horrendous issue because, again, it's a budget upper receiver. If you have to throw on a $20, $30 adjustable gas block on there, it's not the end of the world. However, because this is an A2 front gas block, sight block combo, you can't really remove this without drilling out the pins and then getting another one put on top of it. So this would be a very, very obnoxious system to change out, and it takes a lot of work. And I've done it on one upper receiver, and funnily enough, it was actually a Palmetto State Armory AR-10, the first AR-10 that I ever bought. Had these exact same issues. It would rip off case heads, violently overgassed, so I had to drill out the front sight block, put on an adjustable gas block to fix the problem. So guys, if I had to sum it up for you, I would say the accuracy on this rifle is very good, the price on the rifle is also very good, but the shootability and reliability are quite poor, especially if you're going to be using that steel-cased ammunition. Now, again, if you're somebody who only shoots, you know, Hornady M193 ammunition, then this is still going to be perfectly reliable for you. However, it is going to be still violently overgassed, and even more violently overgassed. When using the 77 grain Razor Core IMI ammunition, it was just ridiculous how much recoil I was getting off of a 5.56 gun. It was feeling really, really dumb. Now I know that Palmetto State Armory makes literally hundreds of different upper receivers and hundreds of different styles, more premium upper receivers, but for me, these classic upper receivers, at least the 16-inch mid-length one, is violently overgassed. Maybe I just got a bad one where the gas port size is just off a little bit too much. Maybe they drilled out a little too much on this specific barrel. So I can't really say how all of these will perform, but in my specific instant, this one here is just way too overgassed that it's causing reliability issues, and of course it will eventually cause excess wear on the bolt and your other internals as well, because that bolt velocity is so high. Now, on top of that, I do want to say that we will be testing out a lot of Palmetto State Armory products in the future, and I do have really high hopes for those, especially some of their newer products. So with all of that being said, I don't really recommend the classic 16-inch series right now, just because of how violently overgassed it is. That being said, of course, the price is really good on them, the accuracy was good, and the kind of retro aesthetics, the way it was put together, the build quality, all seemed quite nice. The gas port on it is just too large. So with all that being said, thank you all for watching. Go ahead and check out Gun Deals once again, because they do have some of the best deals in the industry on basically anything that you're looking for. But that's about it for this video, so thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace off. Good morning, everyone. This is John with Gun Deals, and today we're taking another look at the Palmetto State Armory Classic M4 upper receiver. But before we get into that, if you don't know, Gun Deals is a website that can provide you with links to some of the best prices on a wide variety of products in the industries. And again, that's gun.deals. They don't buy or sell anything. They don't take your money. They only point you in the direction of some of, again, the best deals within the industry, sometimes providing additional coupon codes and other benefits along with it. So if saving money on cool products is something that is of interest to you, go ahead and check them out. And once again, that is gun.deals. And of course, you can also like, share, and subscribe, as all that sort of stuff is free, and go ahead and comment literally anything down below. Now let's go ahead and get into this gun, what was fixed about it, what the problem was, and how it functions now. So if you guys don't remember, on the first video that I did with this upper receiver, the barrel gas port was basically out of spec. We'll get into all the details of that in a minute, but basically it was violently overgassed. Everything else on it was perfectly fine, the fit, function, all that sort of stuff, highly accurate for a non-free floated AR-15. The 16-inch mid-length gas should be a very, very soft recoiling gun just by virtue of being 5.56 mid-length gas, all that sort of fun stuff. But we were having too much gas coming back into the system, increasing the bolt velocity, and unfortunately causing some malfunctions with steel-cased ammo, where the extractor was basically ripping off the side of the case instead of pulling it out of the chamber. So then you have to stick something down your barrel to pump that empty case out. So this is the fourth time this has happened with this upper receiver. This is my 223 push rod thing that's like a barrel cleaner thing. But this is the fourth time it's ripped off the case head. So super sick on that. This one here, the primer actually blew out on it too. Not sure what was going on there, but that was a nightmare to get out. As you can see from the rear end here, I've just been slamming this against the ground with this rod to try and get this guy unstuck from the chamber. Basically, there was just too much force being put on the extractor and, of course, on the case rim itself, just via the fact that the bolt velocity was too high because of that extra gas. Now, after we diagnosed the initial issues we were having with the upper receiver and reached out to Palmetto State Armory, they did, of course, want the upper receiver back because they wanted to fix the problem that we were having. So this went back through their customer service, and when they took it apart, because they have rebarreled this upper receiver, the barrel that was on the original upper receiver that they sent out, or the one that I purchased quite some time ago, had a gas port size of 0.086 inches. Now that sounds like a very small number, and it is quite small. However, most gas port sizes range from 0.067 to 0.075, 0.076, somewhere in that range for most gas systems, again depending on caliber, length, all that sort of fun stuff. But for a mid-length 16-inch gas, which has a good amount of dwell time on it, 0.086 is much, much too large. Now, it might only seem like a slight decrease, but the correct gas port size for this barrel, for their spec, was 0.076. So it's only 0.01 inches different. However, that's about twice the additional gas needed to actually run the system. For instance, if you were just trying to find the minimum amount of gas that would properly run the system, you're probably looking in the middle of a 0.06 range. However, when you're on the 0.086 range, that is far too much gas in the system, causing it to be very, very violent. I'll show you a clip right here. Basically, with an H3 buffer, which I believe is 5.4 ounces, and a 9mm carbine spring, which is like plus 30% stronger than your standard carbine spring, I was getting ejection with steel-cased ammunition of around 1 o'clock. It was very, very overgassed and was causing a lot of issues, again, with reliability. That just shouldn't be there if the gas port was properly sized. Now, that's with an H3 buffer in the back, so this thing is very, very overgassed. This is 55 grain Wolf, so it's a little overgassed. Nice. They did rebarrel it for me, they told me what the issue was, and then they sent it back out so we could do another 500 rounds or so on this new barrel. The problem is basically fixed. There is basically no issue with this upper receiver anymore. It shoots very, very softly. In the new footage, you'll see it ejects steel case anywhere from about 4 to 430, and even brass case, hotter like Hornady M193, which is my favorite type of brass ammunition to use, it ejects around 3 to 330 with just an H2 buffer and a standard carbine spring. So now with the new .076 gas port that's on this barrel, this is a very, very pleasant gun to shoot. So honestly, the shooting impressions on this gun are very, very good. I had no issues with reliability whatsoever. Anything that I put through it, through the cheapest crappy ammunition to high-powered military spec ammunition, everything was functioning 100% flawlessly. And on top of just functioning properly, it was also very, very fun to shoot. A 16-inch gun, mid-length gas system, 5.56 is very, very pleasant, very, very soft recoiling. So this is just a pleasure to shoot. Now it is kind of an older style, you know, with your plastic handguard up front. I think it's kind of a cool retro aesthetic with your front A2 sight and gas block combo. I think that it's a very, very cool rifle. Now, at the time that I purchased this, this was the cheapest upper receiver on the market for like $329. Since that, several months ago, prices have continued to come down on the low end of upper receivers, so this isn't the cheapest upper receiver anymore. But even for the money, $329, it functions very, very well with the new gas port. And it's very, very soft shooting. I don't have any problems with it whatsoever. Now, on top of that, because of course this is a new barrel in the system, I did want to go ahead and redo the accuracy testing that I did on the other barrel. So the accuracy on the gun for a non-free floated AR-15 is very, very good. If I haven't mentioned it already, this is a chrome moly barrel. I believe it's 4140, 4150, something like that. It is a 5.56 chamber, 1 in 7 twist. This is a nitrided barrel, and the nitriding on it, the finish, all of that looks quite good. And with match loads, again, we're only shooting at 50 yards in these clips, so you need to multiply the group size by 2. But even at 50 yards with some of the match loadings, we're approaching 1 to 1.5 MOA, which again for a non-free floated AR is very, very good. Now this is a government profile barrel. It's not the heavier SOCOM or anything else like that. And again, for a non-free floated budget AR, I think that is very, very good. Now, of course, with accuracy, it always depends. What are you feeding it? Who's the shooter? What sort of conditions are you in? And that's really going to determine what sort of accuracy you're going to get out of it. However, again, with match loads, you're approaching that 1 MOA, 1.5 MOA, somewhere in that range, which is very, very good for a budget, again, non-free floated AR-15. And if you feed it just crappy ammunition, you're going to get 2 to 4 or more MOA depending on you and what you're shooting. So that being said, I think that the accuracy on this gun is more than acceptable, in fact quite good for, again, non-free floated AR-15, which doesn't really matter all that much. Depending on certain circumstances it can matter, but generally speaking for most people it's not going to matter all that much. So now just to kind of refresh you on the build in general, this is of course Palmetto State Armory's classic line of upper receivers. These are about $300 right now, though again price is always subject to change. The front gas block and sight combo is very good. It's basically just an A2 style, but it is pinned in place, which I quite like. Just additional security, and it's basically never going to move on you. We do of course have an A2 flash hider up front. On a 16-inch gun there's not a ton of flash, and the A2 birdcage does a good job of compensating for that vertical recoil, so in general it's a very, very good muzzle device. You do have your front bayonet lug for your stabby boy, again if you care. Front sling swivel and your plastic handguards, they are internally heat shielded with that, I think it's an aluminum internal heat shield to kind of keep your hands from burning up. However, even in shooting 200-300 rounds very quickly, it never really got hot enough that it was ever uncomfortable. Moving back from there, the upper receiver is just your standard mil-spec upper receiver, 7075 T6 aluminum, hard coat anodized with, I believe, the Type 3 hard coat anodization. And then your bolt carrier group is a fairly standard job as well. This is just a nitride bolt carrier group, 8620 on the carrier, and the bolt itself is Carpenter 158, and it is MPI tested. Carpenter 158 tool seal is the technical military spec for their bolt carrier groups. There is some debate as to whether or not 9310 is actually better. If it's properly heat treated, it is theoretically better, but for the most part, Carpenter 158 is going to do just fine. In terms of total round count on the upper receiver, we're well over 1,000 rounds, though again, it was rebarreled halfway through the process, and Palmetto State Armory's process for all of that was quite painful. They took it back, and within a week or so, I had it back with a brand new barrel with the proper gas port. Now, something I do want to say, Palmetto State Armory puts out literally thousands and thousands of upper receivers and parts and guns every week. And no matter what you do with tooling that is always changing as you use it, you're always going to get something eventually that passes through QC that just is slightly out of spec, and they were very, very quick and amicable about replacing it, getting the new barrel out. So overall, the rebarreled upper is an extremely high value in my opinion. It's extremely flat shooting. If you look at the slow-mo footage, there's basically no recoil to it, which is very, very nice. It's in the sweet spot in terms of reliability. It'll still run all of your cheap steel-cased ammunition like I like to run a lot of, and it will be pleasant to shoot your more high-powered military ammunition as well. So overall, I think that this is an amazing value upper receiver. I think for, again, 300 bucks complete with a good bolt carrier group, good barrel, that is still accurate, even though it's not free floated like we would like to see in most guns. I do like the retro looks, the front pinned gas block, and of course sight base as well. All very, very good. So that is about it for the video, guys. The rebarrel on here is very, very good. I don't have any problems with it whatsoever, and it fixes literally every issue that I had with the original upper that I got. So that is basically the video, guys. It really is a night and day difference actually shooting the gun before to now with the new barrel in it. And honestly, I don't have any complaints whatsoever, especially for the high value that Palmetto State Armory is pumping out. So go ahead and check out gun.deals again if you're interested in finding some of the best prices on a wide variety of products in the industry. And I will go ahead and see you guys in the next one. Peace off.